Turkey time is almost here, and of course it's fun to spend time with family and friends for most of us, but all the cooking, shopping, and decorating, can you say overwhelming? Well, here to put a stop to your stress and help you have a happy holiday, psychologist Dr. Alexandra Draysoon, and we're so glad that you're here before the holidays so we can kind of set some ground rules and maybe give folks the foundation to release as much stress as possible.
Right. I mean, the holidays don't have to be overwhelming, exhausting, or just difficult and dissatisfying. There are a lot of different tips that people can use to manage the additional stress that comes along with the holidays.
And it's interesting because some people love the holidays, can't wait to decorate, get the, dreidels out, the menorahs, the Christmas lights, whatever. And other people are, want to bury their heads in the sand and just not have it get here. Right.
And it could be the tasks that are associated with the holidays, but it also could be the family dynamics that come along with that.
So let's talk about some ways that we can give for relieving stress, or just, trying to make it as bearable a holiday season for those folks who are just really not looking forward to it.
Well, I think that first people need to really look at their expectations, because oftentimes people want to make the events very memorable, and so they will maybe take on too much that they can't handle. So, for example, especially for women, if they're wanting to create a really great event and they are trying to take on these tasks with the time constraints and the responsibility constraints that they're working full-time outside the home, but they need the time that a woman who works within the home would have, that would be unrealistic and they would be really overwhelmed.
Another thing you had was keep it simple. Do you mean not taking on as many responsibilities, or maybe having the courage to say no to some things?
You definitely have to have really good boundaries and say no when you can't take on that task, but also eliciting the input of other family members and then delegating some tasks to other people who can take on and help out, so that the person isn't left with having to be responsible for everything.
One thing that I think, and it's so complex, hard to cover this in 5 minutes, but when you say about examining your expectations, some family members may not get along, and so how do you go into a family situation maybe having lower expectations, like, this is going to be a Brady Bunch holiday season? How do you maybe lower those so you don't end up disappointed?
I think that you need to remember that people can do the very best that they can, and sometimes even though we have an ideal in our mind, that maybe people can't attain that.
And being organized, my goodness, it's tough any time of the year, but why is it so crucial during the holidays to maintain that organization?
Well, because if you don't, you'll end up toward the end of the event with all these tasks to accomplish, and what you really want to do is prioritize your task list or your to-do list, and then also break them down into small manageable steps, and then say, okay, every day I'm going to work on this, so that you're managing your time well and that you don't have all these tasks and are overwhelmed at the very end.
Makes a lot of sense. So let's say in the family, the wife and the kids are super excited about the holidays, and all the husband sees in his mind are dollar bills. How do you get to kind of keep that in check without going overboard?
Well, we know that this is a really difficult economy for most families, and it's really going to be important to budget. So families need to decide beforehand how much they're willing to spend and how will that money be spent. So they need to know that ahead of time so that they're not overspending and then adding an additional burden of financial stress.
It's so interesting you should say that, because, here at our staff at San Diego 6, some folks were saying, let's just get one person a present. Let's just, pull someone's name from a hat. And I think that would take so much pressure off if maybe more people adopted that policy.
I think that's a great idea, just to be responsible for one person's gift. It would make it so much easier, and I don't think that the holidays are measured by how many gifts you get. There's a lot more that goes into that.
I love some of these tips up here. Practicing gratitude. Man, I know sometimes it's tough. The lines are long. You may be short on cash to get the present you really want for your loved one. How do you do that during this time of the year?
Well, it's important to remember what you are grateful for. There's a lot of different things that maybe we're taking for granted oftentimes, and to remember those people that maybe are hungry and homeless, not only during the holiday season, but also all year long.
Yeah, and taking care of ourselves. For some people, I'm assuming that could mean exercise. I'm sure it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. What do you recommend for folks?
I recommend a good outlet, a healthy, constructive outlet for managing stress, whether that's taking a walk, practicing yoga, eating well, getting enough sleep, however that looks for that individual, so that they can ensure the mental and physical wellness so that they can take on what the holidays require.
All right, and beyond practicing gratitude, optimism? You know, you're standing in the line, it's taken an hour. Woohoo, I love this line. I mean, how do you do that?
You want to stay positive and you want to expect the best, and also know that in advance, you know, it's going to be a little bit busy, and so take some extra time to account for that. But just stay positive, be flexible and adaptable to the situation. What is stress going to do for you? It's not going to get you anywhere.
No way, no how. Dr. Alexandra Draysoon, thank you so much for joining us, and I just think it's so great that you're on before the holidays, so maybe this stuff, we're planting the seeds, maybe these things can sink in now, and we can really access them once the holidays are here.
Absolutely.
Good to have you on, and of course,